Maybe you've dreamed about retiring abroad. You saw that movie Under the Tuscan Sun, and you're like, I now have to buy a rundown house in rural Italy with lots of olive trees. I don't know, whatever the fantasy is, but your life isn't a movie. That was a movie. Remember, that was a movie. Book first, but then movie. There are a lot of things that you need to think about before you make such a big move. And I came across a company that helps people make those decisions and find their place and take the leap. It is called Expatsi, and it is a platform that helps U.S. citizens in particular find their homes abroad. Its co-founder is Jen Barnett, and she joins us today from Merida, Mexico. She says it much more elegantly than I do. Hello,
I
Jen. Let me hear you say it.
I say Merida, but
Merida.
listen, I am learning. Estoy aprendiendo español.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I know your specific focus is US citizens. A lot of your insight very easily applies to Canadians.
Sure.
Why did you decide to start Expatsi?
So on our part, we decided to move abroad ourselves. Listen, I don't know if you've heard, there's a lot going on in the US,
One or
and
two things, yes.
yeah, it's been dramatic for a while, and that inspired us to start looking around. But when you don't know where to go, there just aren't tools. If you know, absolutely, I want to buy a house in Tuscany, and then listen, there's stuff you need to know, of course, but you can start to forge that path. But when you don't know, and all 194 countries are on the table, including Vatican City, you don't know where to start. So we had toyed around and just were completely mystified, tried reading books, and then we finally sat down and just said, okay, what is important to us? This is what we want for weather, cost of living, safety, healthcare, infrastructure, human rights. And then started researching countries and saying, okay, this one gets a point, this one doesn't get a point in each of these factors. And from that, we came up with a top 10 list of countries we wanted to try.
So, what does a client or a web surfer find when they go to Expatsi? How does that even work?
So basically, they come to our site. Maybe they saw us on TikTok or on Reddit or saw an ad, and they visit, and we encourage them to go through the same process we went through to choose countries. So we built a quiz, and it's around all the data that we compiled when we were doing our own search. At the end, we recommend 10 countries for them, and they're based on countries where they can move, but also where they might want to move. But really, it's a thought starter to say, these are the things that I need to consider. And then from there, we try to move them through the rest of the stages of moving abroad.
I came across you because I saw an ad for a group scouting trip, which I thought it was a genius idea. How do these trips work?
So thank you. It all started because we had done our own scouting trips. And, it's not a vacation, right? Like moving to a place where you have only been on vacation is like getting married on the first date because you have only seen this place under its best light, when money is no object and it's nothing but fun. But when you really move to a place, you need to see what the pharmacy is like and what the market is like. And how do you feel about not having air conditioning, which is the biggest American concern, I feel like. And so what we do is we take folks and first we introduce them to professionals. So we have immigration attorney, real estate, healthcare, wealth management, taxes, and they sit and they hear all the pros and cons of moving to that place and meet them to get started on their paperwork if they want to. Then we take them to see different towns and neighborhoods all over that country where people live. So in Portugal, we don't go to Belém Tower, or to the castles in Sintra. We take them to Cascais and Ericeira or wherever to experience what it might be like to live there. They even see real estate on the trips.
Well, I am obsessed with open houses, and my husband and I book a realtor in every city we travel to, and we
Brilliant.
always do a full day to just go and see places to live.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll move abroad one day, maybe we won't, but boy, do we love real estate. The big question for us, and I think for a lot of people, is how do you finance a property internationally? It's super clear on how to get a mortgage here in Canada. What is
Mhm.
your wisdom? And obviously, this is general because I'm sure it differs by country, but what's your wisdom in terms of how people should walk that particular path, answer that particular question for themselves?
So the mortgage industry doesn't exist in the rest of the world the way it exists in the US, where we take out 30-year mortgages and pay teensy weensy interest rates are used to, and so on. It's much more common to pay out of pocket or to have a 10-year mortgage and things like that. We have a new partner who is helping people get mortgages in different countries, because I think as people move abroad, it's catching on. But sometimes those mortgage lenders aren't even in the country. They are just servicing Americans or Canadians who are moving abroad and need to follow that same path. Now, in general, we recommend that folks rent when they get to a place, because you need to see if you picked the right street, if you picked the right neighborhood, the right country before you really make a commitment. It's always much easier to buy than it is to sell. But once you're ready, then you do have more options than you used to have. Ideally, though, especially for retirees, they can just plunk down their cash and move right in. Now, there used to be a lot of paths to get visas by buying property. And there still are some, especially in Central and South America. And there is in Greece still, and in Spain, I don't know when this airs, but through April 3rd of 2025.
One of the circumstance differences is that for a lot of Canadians, it's less about retiring abroad and more about being a snowbird, because
Yes,
#winter. So
yes.
what are some of the things that would be top of mind to think about if what you're looking for is not retiring abroad? You're happy to have your primary health care in your home country, stay in Canada on that, but you're going to go abroad for 3 or 4 months. What applies and what doesn't apply if you just want to be a snowbird?
Well, the big thing is to know how long you can get a visa for. So, in the Schengen zone, which is that collection of 27 countries in Europe that share a border, you can stay for 3 months out of every 6 months without causing a stir. In the UK, you can stay 6 months. In Mexico, you can stay in 6 months. That's why I have a lot of Canadians around me who will be leaving in about a month. And then Costa Rica and places like that. So the big thing is to know how long you need to stay. If you'd like to go for residency, generally the country wants you to move there, because what they're getting out of you is your tax dollars, and your spend. So they'd like for you to stay usually 183 days so that you tip that scale into becoming a tax resident. However, if you want to become a resident in someplace like Mexico, you aren't required to stay any specific period of time. And usually when you have a golden visa, you aren't either.
I referenced sun because Canadians really want that. But another reason why a lot of people choose to retire abroad is because of the cost of living. In developing countries, it can be significantly less expensive. Does your test or your quiz factor in cost of living so you can find the ideal intersection of enough sun but lower cost of living?
It does. There are countries that kind of fall above a line for value and below a line. But I will tell you, even the cheapest expensive country is Spain. And for Americans and Canadians, the cost of living in Spain is staggeringly lower than what we expect. And of course, for Americans in particular, it's healthcare that kills us. Housing is bad enough, but it's healthcare that really kills us, and that never ends. So the fact that you can go to a place like Portugal or Spain, and in some cases eventually end up on the public system. But even if you don't have healthcare costs of a couple $100 a month, that's just, it's just mind blowing for
Yeah.
Americans.
Yeah. Canadians are like, what do you mean paying for healthcare? I
I
don't even know
know,
what
I
you're talking
know.
about. What?
And they even get covered in Mexico, depending on what province they're from, which
Yeah.
is just amazing.
So all of this sounds amazing. And I'm sure it is amazing, but it can't be perfect. So when you reflect on your experience of moving to Mexico, what have been some of the hardest things? What have been the challenges that you've faced along the way?
Listen, I will tell you, and maybe I'm still in a honeymoon phase, but I just wish I'd come sooner, frankly. However, I know myself and I know my personality, and I am flexible and I'm take charge. And one of our experts in Uruguay talks about how if you have a type A personality, but you're flexible, where that Venn diagram meets is how likely you are to be successful abroad. you have to be able to take charge, but you don't have to be so take charge and controlling that you can't deal with the fact that things are done differently wherever you're going. And don't forget, the fact that they do things differently is why you're moving.
Oh my gosh, that. So first of all, super insightful. And second of all, that's totally me. I am full on take charge, but I can be flexible and I love
Good.
to travel more than anything.
You'd be perfect. You would be perfect.
Jen,
Mhm.
thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Jen Barnett is co-founder of Expatsi. It is a platform that helps people find their home abroad. And boy, I'm going to be Googling for the next 12 hours. Don't bug me.